Imagine a place where the minds of Socrates, the secrets of the stars, and the mysteries of ancient civilizations were all stored, then vanished forever. They say knowledge is power. But what happens when the most powerful archive of human understanding disappears? No war, no plague, no earthquake could rival what the world lost the day the Library of Alexandria fell. Imagine an ancient internet not made of code, but of parchment and papyrus. A place where the genius of 10,000 minds was stacked in scrolls, and then, one day, gone, burned, buried, erased. This isn't just a story about a library. It's about what we choose to remember and what we let the fire take. To understand the Library of Alexandria, we must step into the time it was born. After the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE, his empire split among his generals. One of them, Ptolemy I, Soter, took control of Egypt. But he didn't just want to rule, he wanted to illuminate. He dreamed of building a center where all the knowledge of the world would be gathered, studied, and expanded. So, on the northern coast of Egypt, near the harbor of Alexandria, the greatest library the world would ever know began to rise. But this wasn't just a place to borrow scrolls. The Library of Alexandria wasn't a public reading room, it was a research institute, a temple of thought. It attracted scholars, scientists, poets, historians, thinkers from across Greece, Persia, India, and Egypt. They lived there, ate there, argued there. Imagine a place where you might hear a debate on whether the earth spins, then turn a corner to find a dissection underway to study the heart. It was a place where curiosity had no borders, no end, no fear. The scale of the ambition was breathtaking. The Ptolemies ordered that any ship docking in Alexandria was to be searched. Any scroll or manuscript found was to be taken, copied, and preserved. The original stayed in the library. The copy went back. Over decades, this policy helped the library grow to an estimated 400,000 scrolls. Some ancient accounts go further, claiming as many as 700,000. But even if only a fraction of that is true, it would have made Alexandria the greatest knowledge repository of the ancient world. What kinds of works were stored there? It's hard to say with certainty, but fragments, quotations, and references hint at its richness. Texts on medicine, astronomy, mathematics, histories of lost civilizations, plays and poetry no longer read. It said the complete works of Aristotle and original manuscripts by Homer were there. Entire schools of thought that no longer exist, wiped out not because they were false, but because no one was left to read them. The library didn't just preserve ideas. It preserved entire possibilities for human progress. The library was more than scrolls. It was a living organism. Attached to it was the Museum, or Temple of the Muses, a precursor to the modern university. It had lecture halls, observatories, botanical gardens, even a zoo. Scholars were given food, housing, and a stipend. They weren't expected to produce anything on a deadline, just to think. That was the mission: to ponder the cosmos, to uncover laws of physics, to challenge assumptions. Imagine that being paid not for results, but for curiosity. It was a golden age of wonder. Among the library's residents were legendary thinkers. Eratosthenes, who calculated the circumference of the earth with astonishing accuracy using nothing but shadows and simple math. Herophilos, who dissected human cadavers and studied the nervous system when others thought the brain was just cooling fluid. Archimedes may have studied here. So might have Apollonius, who wrote the epic Argonautica. It was a crossroads of minds, where ideas weren't national but universal. Every breakthrough led to another question. Every answer unraveled new mysteries. The building may have been stone, but the ideas, they flew like fire. But then, like all things too bright for their time, the library attracted danger. not from an enemy army or an invading empire, but from the slow grinding forces of time, politics, and belief. One of the first suspected blows came in 48 BCE. Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria during his war against Pompey. Trapped in the harbor, he ordered the docks to be set ablaze. The fire spread, some say, to the warehouses near the library. Scrolls were destroyed, but how many? Some accounts say a few thousand. Others, that the heart of the library was lost. But here's the mystery. No ancient source definitively says the library burned down. It's all fragments, bits of letters, vague references. Was it entirely lost in Caesar's fire, or only damaged? Was it rebuilt, or already fading before that? There are no clean answers. What we do know is that it wasn't a single event. The destruction of Alexandria's knowledge was like a slow, tragic erasure. A few scrolls here, a depot sacked there, a new ruler, a changed religion, a forgotten priority, death by 1,000 dismissals. In the 3rd and 4th centuries CE, the Roman Empire began shifting. Christianity was on the rise. Pagan institutions, once revered, were now suspect. The Serapeum, a sister library and temple to the god Serapis, became a target. In 391 CE, the Christian bishop Theophilus ordered it destroyed. Statues shattered, altars burned. Scrolls were either lost in the chaos or burned as remnants of a forbidden past. Whether the main library still stood at this point is unknown. But by then, the flame of learning that once lit the ancient world was flickering. Then came one of history's great tragedies, the death of Hypatia, the last known librarian of Alexandria. A philosopher, mathematician, and astronomer, Hypatia defied the expectations of her time. She taught freely, debated fiercely, and held intellectual salons attended by both pagans and Christians. But in a moment of political and religious tension, she became a target. In 415 CE, a Christian mob brutally murdered her, stripped, flayed, and burned. Her death marked more than the loss of a brilliant mind. It symbolized the end of an era, an end to Alexandria's intellectual soul. There is one more suspect often blamed for the library's final destruction: the 7th century Muslim conquest of Egypt. According to one story, likely apocryphal, Caliph Omar ordered the remaining books burned, declaring that if the knowledge aligned with the Quran, it was unnecessary, and if it conflicted, it was dangerous. But this tale appears in much later Christian sources. With no solid evidence, modern historians tend to reject it. Still, whether myth or memory, the story speaks to a chilling truth. Knowledge has often been judged not by its merit, but by its perceived threat. So, was the library burned in a single day? Probably not. More likely, it declined over centuries. Fires chipped away. Politics shifted priorities. The winds of ideology scattered scholars to the corners of the empire. Like a garden left untended, it withered. By the time travelers wrote of Alexandria in the Middle Ages, the library was no more. Just a memory, a rumor, a ghost. And yet, the myth of the library lives on. In every lost manuscript, every ancient puzzle, every gap in the historical record. The idea that somewhere, in time's darkened corridors, we left a door unlocked. That knowledge we once held slipped through our fingers like sand. That maybe, just maybe, some part of it still waits to be rediscovered. There are those who believe pieces survived. Some say scrolls were smuggled to Constantinople. Others suggest they were copied and hidden in monasteries in Syria, Armenia, or even India. Archaeologists today still search, not for a building, but for words buried in sealed jars, etched into stone, or tucked inside forgotten tombs. We may never recover the library in full, but every fragment found is a whisper from that lost world. Imagine this. Somewhere deep beneath the modern city of Alexandria, a sealed chamber, dust, choked, untouched for millennia, and inside scrolls, dozens, maybe hundreds, preserved in the dry Egyptian air. What lost voices would we hear? A new play by Euripides, a medical treatise describing ancient brain surgery, a philosophy that could shift modern thinking. It sounds like fantasy, but discoveries like the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Library prove that ancient writings can and do survive. The hope lingers. The library may be gone, but her children might still be waiting. But beyond lost scrolls, the library's real legacy is an idea, a belief that knowledge should be shared across cultures, languages, and borders. The Ptolemies didn't just collect Greek writings. They translated Egyptian, Persian, and Indian texts. They welcomed Jews, Buddhists, and Zoroastrians. The library was a sanctuary for the human mind, no matter where it was born. In a world still fractured by borders and dogma, the spirit of Alexandria remains both a beacon and a challenge. Let's step back to the men who built it. The Ptolemies were not saints. They were kings, ruthless when needed. But in building the library, they demonstrated a rare truth. Even powerful people can choose to preserve, not destroy. Ptolemy II Philadelphus expanded the library with relentless passion. He sent envoys across the Mediterranean to collect books. He even paid vast sums to borrow and copy treasured manuscripts like the official Athenian edition of Euripides' plays. It was an empire not just of territory, but of thought. And there was a second branch often forgotten. The Serapeum, the temple to Serapis, held a backup of the main collection. It was located farther inland and served as both a religious and academic space. Some scholars believe when the main library was damaged, the Serapeum became the new heart of Alexandria's intellectual life. But in 391 CE, this backup was destroyed. Ironically, it's this event, not Caesar's fire, that may have dealt the final blow. A tragedy not of war, but of ideology. Throughout the ancient world, libraries sprouted like stars on a dark sky, in Pergamon, Ephesus, and Babylon, but none rivaled Alexandria. And yet there were warnings, hints of jealousy, fear, and resentment. Rival cities accused Alexandria of theft. Pergamon developed parchment as an alternative to papyrus, when Egypt stopped exporting it, possibly to maintain Alexandria's dominance. Knowledge, it turns out, was a geopolitical weapon, a form of ancient soft power, and like all weapons, it was feared. The library also faced an eternal paradox. Its greatest strength was also its fatal flaw: centralization. By gathering everything in one place, the Ptolemies made a single point of failure. A single match, a single ruler's whim, and centuries of accumulated wisdom could vanish. And that's precisely what happened. The lesson? True preservation comes from distribution, an idea that now lives in the decentralized nature of the internet. Alexandria taught us what happens when we hoard wisdom. Now we try, in our own way, to scatter it like seeds. And yet, we still don't know where the library actually stood. Archaeologists have long searched the city for its remains. But Alexandria is built atop itself, layers upon layers of civilization, concrete, sand, and time. Some believe the library was near the royal quarter, now beneath modern streets and buildings. Others think it lies closer to the ancient harbor. Ground-penetrating radar, underwater dives, and satellite mapping have all been used. But so far, no definitive walls, no archways, no scroll vaults, just silence and speculation. But sometimes, the absence tells its own story. What was so powerful about this place that even its memory was buried? Why was there no restoration, no rebuilding? It's as if history itself wanted to forget it, or someone wanted it forgotten. Was it fear of what was inside, or shame over what had been lost? Whatever the reason, the silence around the library's fate is one of the most deafening in all of history. We often think of knowledge as permanent. Written words feel eternal, but they're not. They're fragile, vulnerable to fire, moisture, neglect, and most of all, to human choice. The Library of Alexandria is a graveyard of what-ifs. What if heliocentrism had caught on sooner? What if ancient medicine had advanced centuries earlier? What if plays and philosophies we'll never read had shaped our minds? The tragedy isn't just what was destroyed, it's what we never got to become. But some things did survive because they escaped the library. Translations, mentions in other works. The torch was passed, not perfectly, but persistently. In Baghdad, the House of Wisdom rose in the 9th century. Islamic scholars preserved, translated, and expanded on Greek knowledge. In Moorish Spain, libraries flourished. The spark of Alexandria lit fires elsewhere. Knowledge, like flame, finds a way to leap across the darkness if we let it. And today, echoes of the library remain, not just in history books, but in the mission of libraries, universities, even public platforms. When we digitize ancient manuscripts or fight for open access to scientific research, we are defending Alexandria's dream. Every Wikipedia editor, every open-source programmer, every archivist scanning a crumbling scroll, they are all librarians of Alexandria, reborn. There's even a modern monument, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina. Opened in 2002, it sits near the ancient harbor, in the spirit of the original library. It's a stunning, circular structure, half buried in the earth, half reaching toward the sky. Its outer wall is engraved with scripts from around the world. It's not a replacement. It can never be, but it's a promise that we remember, that we're trying again. Still, the modern bibliotheca is symbolic, not archaeological. We don't know the exact location of the original, and maybe we never will. But maybe that's fitting. The library was never just a place. It was an idea. And ideas, unlike buildings, don't burn so easily. They smolder, they travel, they wait for the next mind to take them in. So now, ask yourself, what are we building today that future civilizations will mourn? What digital scrolls are we preserving? What wisdom are we letting disappear because we think it's not valuable now? We think the internet is eternal, but hard drives fail. Platforms die. Censorship creeps. We are always one generation away from forgetting everything. Alexandria reminds us, preservation is not passive. It's a choice, an action, a fight. And maybe that's why the library haunts us. Because we see ourselves in it, in our ambition, our brilliance, our flaws. It tells us that knowledge is beautiful, but vulnerable. That civilization is only as strong as its memory, and that sometimes all it takes is a spark or silence to erase 1,000 years. Have you ever considered how much we take for granted? One click, and you summon knowledge once buried in temples. But would we fight to protect it? Would we risk our lives to save it like monks did in the Middle Ages, copying texts by candlelight to preserve forgotten truths? The people of Alexandria did, quietly, desperately. Before the flames, there were hands, copying, hiding, hoping, and those hands may be the reason we know even fragments today. It makes you wonder what didn't make it. What slipped through time's cracks? Did someone once write the cure to a disease we still battle today? Did a forgotten astronomer draw a map of the stars with greater precision than we imagined? We'll never know. The absence is invisible. That's the cruelest part. What we lost may have been better than what we know. There's something hauntingly poetic about it. That the greatest library in human history was destroyed not in one grand, dramatic blaze, but slowly, tragically, through neglect and pride, through power struggles, through silence. It didn't scream as it died. It whispered, and in that whisper, we hear ourselves. Today, we talk about data loss, crashed servers, corrupted files, forgotten passwords. It feels technical, but it's the same story, same fear, same fragility. We build, store, and lose. Our cloud is their papyrus, their scrolls, our servers. The mediums change. The stakes don't. That's why this story matters now more than ever. Because we are Alexandria again, standing at the edge of what's known and unknown. With tools beyond imagination and risks to match, will we build for permanence? Or will we let it all burn again? This time, silently. Ask yourself, if the library hadn't vanished, how different would our world be? Would we be decades ahead? Centuries? Would the Renaissance have begun sooner? Would global wars have been avoided? It's impossible to say, but you can feel the weight of the missing links, the hollow spaces where knowledge should be. We often romanticize the ancient world, but Alexandria wasn't just old stone and scrolls. It was electric. People argued over theories, challenged kings, observed eclipses, built models of machines. They didn't just preserve knowledge, they pushed it forward. And maybe that's why it was feared, because knowledge doesn't sit quietly, it disrupts. Some say the destruction of the library was inevitable, that too much truth in one place threatens power, that kings fear thinkers, that religions fear ideas older than themselves. And maybe they're right. But if so, then every time we build again, we resist that fate. Every saved truth is an act of rebellion. The tragedy of Alexandria isn't just historical, it's deeply human. It reminds us that progress is fragile, that curiosity needs protection, and that when we lose what we've learned, we lose who we are and who we could be. But there's hope in this story too, because you're here, listening, wondering. That's where it all begins, with a single question: what if? The same question that echoed in the marble halls of the ancient library, and the same question we must keep asking. Maybe that's the real lesson, that the pursuit of knowledge is never finished, that there's always more to discover, always more to preserve. The library didn't end, it transformed into us. Our stories, our curiosity, our search for the stars. Think of this. Every time you read something new, you become a librarian of Alexandria. Every fact you remember, every story you pass on, you're part of a chain older than fire, stronger than stone, built on words, carried by minds. And maybe someday, someone will find what we left behind, and they'll wonder who we were, what we believed, what we feared, what we forgot. We are, all of us, writing the next lost library. Let's make it worth finding. So, light your torch. Read something old. Write something new. Ask better questions. Protect knowledge. Share it. Pass it on. The library may be gone, but the mission never ended. It lives in us now, in this very moment, in you. And when someone asks, what happened to the great Library of Alexandria? You'll know the truth. It didn't disappear, not entirely. It just changed form, became a whisper, a myth. A spark passed from mind to mind, and tonight you heard it. And now, the whisper is yours. Carry it carefully. The library's story isn't just a memory, it's a warning and a responsibility. Because the next great loss of knowledge might not be from fire. It could be from distraction, neglect, indifference. We scroll more than we think, but how much do we retain? We're drowning in information, but starved for wisdom. The ancients sought meaning in the stars, the sea, the mind. They were not perfect. But they cared. They wondered. Do we? In some ways, we've never been closer to the dream of Alexandria. Global access to libraries, science shared instantly, cultures in dialogue. But it's fragile, built on wires, policies, and algorithms. What happens if those fail? What happens when no one's watching? The library's silence reminds us to listen not just to facts, but to the deeper echoes behind them. The scrolls mattered not because they were old, but because they captured life, ideas, experiments, mistakes, dreams. And that's what you carry now, not the facts of this story, but its fire, the sense that knowledge is sacred, that ideas once lost don't return, and that you are a guardian of what remains. You might never stand in marble halls or run your fingers over ancient papyrus, but the real library is in your mind, and what you do with it, that's the future. That's the part the ancients couldn't predict. Think of how long it took for their whispers to reach us, through collapse, translation, war, forgetting, and still, here we are. The line was never broken. You're part of it now. The last page is still being written. And who knows, maybe one day a curious soul will find this very recording and wonder who you were. What kind of people told stories about vanished libraries? What kind of world needed to be reminded of wisdom? Maybe they'll see you not as ancient or outdated, but as a spark, a voice that cared, that tried, that passed on something that mattered, a voice from the ruins, refusing to stay quiet. So if this episode stays with you, let it change how you see books, archives, ideas. Let it make you curious, hungry, protective. Because the greatest tragedy is not the fire that burned the library. It's the day we stop asking what it meant. Don't let that happen. Pick up where the scrolls left off. Write, learn, speak, teach. Be a light in someone else's dark room. That's all Alexandria ever wanted to be. And now it's your turn. Thank you for taking this journey through time and wonder. You didn't just hear a story tonight. You became a part of one. A living story, passed voice to voice, thought to thought. And it's still unfolding. If something in this story moved you even a little, let that be your guide. Ask better questions. Follow your curiosity. Don't let wonder die. That's how lost libraries are rebuilt, one spark at a time. And if you feel the weight of what's been lost, don't carry it alone. Share this with someone. Let the whisper become a conversation. Let the memory become a movement. That's how we keep the fire alive. And finally, if the Library of Alexandria taught us anything, it's this: what we choose to remember defines who we become. So remember this moment, this story. And if you ever hear a silence too loud to ignore, lean in. It might just be history whispering back. Thanks for listening. If this story captivated you, I'd love it if you hit subscribe and maybe even shared it with someone curious. Got questions or thoughts? Drop them below. I'll be back to check in. Thanks again, and see you in the next episode.